Welcome back, folks. It's James Sexton here. You're watching Better Call Sexton. We got a great show for you today. The Minnesota Vikings debuting their 2 new male cheerleaders to so much drama and controversy. We got marriage advice all the way from Japan. The kids are going back to school, maybe even back to the Boy Scouts. And of course, my favorite, am I the asshole? Let's get it going.
Minnesota Vikings with their 2 new male cheerleaders on the official dance squad debuted a few days ago, not super long ago, to much controversy. We're going to give you a quick TikTok about it.
If you don't like me, that's fine. But, watch your mouth.
Is this legit?
That's them.
This is them? Okay, I feel about, first of all, the one with the long hair. Hear me out on this. I feel about him like I do Leonardo DiCaprio in Romeo and Juliet, okay? I think you could look at him and go, I kind of wouldn't mind kissing him, and it's not gay. I think it's technically not gay, because he's so feminine looking in that film that you really find yourself kind of going like, I don't really know. I say this as a man who lives in a primarily gay neighborhood in New York City. I really feel like there's some of these twink guys going around that you look at them and you're like, it blurs the line here. I don't really know. So, here's what I'll tell you. I feel like something for everybody. This is a whole different way. Bring another audience to the sport. If anybody's a big football fan, I don't understand. I mean, of course, there's a giant amount of football fans. If you're a diehard football fan, I have some friends that bleed jet green. And I have to tell you, this will not scare them off from football. They're not going to give up the sport and be like, well, I guess it's just basketball season from now on. I guess we'll take up the WNBA now. I just don't see it happening. I think the people who love football love football. Maybe this brings a different audience. Maybe this brings some people. Listen, everyone loves a fabulous gay man. Let's admit it, right? Every woman, every heterosexual woman out there, put your hands up. You know it's true. You want these guys to be your best friend. This is what you want. This is the best friend you want. This is the best friend you need. You want to sit with them and make catty comments while you watch the Golden Girls or the Golden Globes. That's what you want to do with these people. And guys, I have to tell you, as someone who has a lot of gay male friends, there is nobody better to tell you when you're dressing incorrectly, to tell you what skincare products you need. This is not a big ask. And trust me, don't worry. They don't want to sleep with you. Have you seen gay men? They look photoshopped. I'm the last thing they're going to want. Believe me, you should be flattered if a gay man checks you out. Every once in a while on the elevator, I have a gay man look me up and down. I feel 7 feet tall the rest of the day because that's harder to do than getting a model female to look at you. So I will tell you, I think this is good. It opens up a whole, you watch the popularity of RuPaul's Drag Race, the popularity of the sort of fabulous gay stereotype, which, by the way, stereotypes are a real time saver. That's a real demographic. That's a group of guys. Trust me, I'm friendly with a lot of them. I go to the gym as a lot of them. By the way, they love going to the gym. That's why they're in such good shape. That's why they look like they're photoshopped. And why? Because there's always a chance you'll get laid at the gym. I mean, think about that. If I knew there was always a chance I'd get laid at the gym, I'd go to the gym 3 times a day. It's a phenomenal place for them. So I think this is good. I think this is a great opportunity. I think that this is going to give something for everybody to watch. You know you're going to tune in. I have no interest in the Vikings. I have no interest in Minnesota. I didn't actually know that's a place. I just thought it's a place you went through when you're going to someplace better. Ultimately, this gives people an excuse to watch the Minnesota Vikings. And you know what? This could be a lot of fun. I think the uniforms are exciting. I think this is one of those things that if you have a problem with this, it might say more about how it's making you feel. You know what I mean? The guys I know who are like, well, that's it. I'm not watching football. I'm like, are you worried? Are you worried that there's going to be some reaction going on down south for you? That the men in tight pants wasn't enough for you? That this is going to be the thing that pushes you over the edge? So listen, those of you who are diehard football fans, you're going to stay that way. Homophobia is no longer a particularly chic thing. It's no longer in vogue. It's not really part of the zeitgeist. I say cheers. I think we should have a 50-50 split of the, gay twink cheerleaders and the hot female cheerleaders. I'm just glad this didn't turn into a all sizes matter thing where we got to have severely overweight cheerleaders, because I don't think any of us are going to feel good about that. So I think this is a good move. I'm all for it. I'm still not going to watch football. But you know what? If anything would make me tune in for whatever the halftime show or whatever, whenever the cheerleaders come out, this would be it. I want to say, I think it's going to be fabulous.
So now we're going to get into our next article from the Economic Times. We're going all the way to Japan on this one. Maybe you want to, before we get in, I know you have some experience with Japan. I know you have.
That means I speak a little Japanese.
So coming out of Japan, we have some marriage advice coming from a popular book called Sotsukon. Is that a word you're familiar with? Sotsukon?
Sotsukon? I don't know what that word means.
Okay, so so the book was written in 2004 by Japanese writer Yumiko Sugiyama, but recently resurfaced in popularity. So the phrase is called Sotsukon no Susume, meaning recommending the graduation from marriage.
Sure.
The word combines graduation and marriage, reflecting a model where couples legally stay married, but lead largely independent lives, going so far as to live in different homes, not even see each other for the sake of law, for the sake of, not having to give up half of their property. What do we think about this concept?
So if I understand the concept correctly, the idea here is that we used to refer to this as quiet divorce, which is that you separate from each other. We also jokingly used to call it an Irish divorce, which is you go out for milk and never come back. So the question really is, what is meant by this? So I think there's two ways you can view the concept of graduating from marriage or sort of transcending marriage. One is that you end a marriage, meaning you end the pair bond, you end the coupling, you end the connection between two people without formalizing that by divorce, meaning you just begin living completely separated lives, except perhaps for certain economic ties. The other way of viewing it is that you essentially rewrite the rules of your marriage to now include that you don't cohabitate anymore. And there are actually a surprising number of people who have made that choice, who do not live in New York City. This is actually something people do, is they'll buy another apartment or rent another apartment in the same building as their spouse, and they'll sort of have separate lives, separate bedrooms, separate bathrooms. There are many people that extol the virtues of having separate bedrooms and separate baths. Fundamentally, that doesn't necessarily mean that this marriage is an unhealthy or unhappy marriage, as opposed to two people living in a shared space together where they can't stand each other and they just jab at each other all day long. So I do think the idea of graduating from the concept of traditional marriage as being the only way people can be married is actually something to aspire to. I think that the only two people who should be writing the rules of a marriage are the two people who are in the marriage. So if sleeping in the same bed makes you happy, great. If having sex and then sleeping in separate bedrooms makes you happy because you want to be able to sleep deeply, and we all know it sucks sleeping in bed with another human being, that's okay too. Really, the only two people who have to find satisfaction in the routine of the marriage are the two people who are in it. So I think the Japanese may be sort of approaching this. It may be sort of the start of something where they're giving name to something that already exists in most long-term couplings. If you talk to people who've been married for extended periods of time, there are plenty of ways that they fall into their own rhythms. Anybody who's in a long-term romantic relationship, you fall into your own rhythms that really accommodate between the two of you. And some of that we talk about with people and some of it we don't. I think there's a lot of value in writing the rules of your own marriage. To tie it to a concept that I talk about in my book is there's the you, there's the me, and there's the we. And I think when you meet someone, when you're first courting someone, there's you and there's me, and we want to get to know each other, and we're interested and we're interesting, right? And then what happens is we spend some time in the we, and we try to build up the we. And that's really what courtship is. That's what being an early couple is. That's what early marriage often is you want to feed the we. But if the we starts to completely cannibalize the you and the me, that Venn diagram becomes so much we that now the line of what's you and what's me is so thin and so small, really, you're not only taking that away from yourself, you're taking it away from your partner. Your partner fell in love with a version of you that had independence, autonomy, agency. It had its own defined characteristics, some element of mystery, some separateness, some otherness. So if all you do is feed that we, and by the way, it's not surprising to me that sometimes when people have finished their journey as hands-on parents, where their kids go off to college or their kids are now adults, that's a time where people start to go, hey, wait a minute, we've now been connected to the we in this big way because the we was big. It included our children and the two of us. Now the we has fewer people dependent on it. Or are we secure enough in our attachment to each other to give the other a little longer tether to go out and sort of live your life? I think there's tremendous joy to be found in allowing the person who you're in a romantic relationship with to come to the fullness of who they are. I can't think of a better compliment that at the end of your life to be able to look at another person and say, you helped me become the best version of who I am. You helped me figure out who I wanted to be and then helped me become that person. What a gift to help someone. Because again, I genuinely don't think I can learn everything I need to know about myself from myself. I think I need someone to help me with my blind spots. And that's what's so great about pair bonds. That's what's so great about being part of a relationship is in its ideal form. This is a way to become you. This is a way to become yourself, not just a way to become part of some coupling and to lose who you are. So if this is about feeding your individual goals, your individual inner life, and helping, like, again, without abandoning the connection to this other person, I'm all for it. I think that it's a very healthy way of approaching relationships.
We have a TikTok here for you. Little fun, little sappy TikTok. Thought you'd want to give a quick reaction. People love when you see stuff like this and give you a reaction, and we'll get into the main topic after it. So the kids are coming back to school. This is all over.
It's the circle of life. Yeah.
Kids coming back to school. People would love to know. You talk about divorce, talk about marriage, but we don't get into co-parenting a lot. We don't really get into the situation of what happens when you got young kids.
Sure.
School's starting up. You're getting the kids into school. Maybe you're a divorced couple.
Yeah.
The kid is now going off to school.
Yeah.
What are some of the issues of that? How do we tackle these things?
Yeah. So what I'll tell you is a couple of things. One, you hear a lot about crazy, ugly divorces because they're super interesting. They're much more interesting than typical divorces. Like, you know, I don't get invited to a lot of parties, but if I was invited to a party and I went to a party and I said to somebody, I'm a divorce lawyer, and they go, oh my God, you must have so many stories. And I went, oh my God, I do. There's this couple and they were married and then they, grew apart from each other, but they still had a certain amount of affection and love for each other and they had children in common. So they divided their property in an equitable manner and then they shared time with their children and they made sure that they focused on the children's best interests, even though they were apart. You would be like, that is the most boring story ever. Whereas if I'm like, and then he took a chainsaw and he cut the car in half and he was like, pick which side you want, bitch. You'd sign up for that. You'd be like, that's the kind of story I want to hear. So the truth is, most couples who divorce, they love their children more than they hate their now ex-spouse. Like mostly they can focus on how much they love their kids and they both want their kids to be happy and successful. You hear a lot about ugly divorces because A, it's way more interesting, and B, the kind of people who talk about their divorce are people who were scarred by their divorce and just can't put it down. So they just keep talking about it nonstop. It's like the old joke, why don't cannibals eat divorced women? Because they're bitter. Okay. So the reality is, I think what we have to focus on now is more of this kind of normal thing, which is, yeah, divorced parents are thinking about the same things that most parents are thinking about. Kids are going back to school. There's some expenses that come with that. There's some changes in routine that have to come with that. There's some changes in their extracurricular activities that come with that. And that's an opportunity for most couples to do what most divorced couples do, which is pick up the phone or email each other or text each other and go, okay, I know Wednesday is usually your dinner night, but on Wednesday now she's got gymnastics. So do you want to switch to Tuesday or Thursday? And then you go, well, Thursdays I have a lot of work meetings and Tuesdays I like to go to a yoga class. So maybe we could do, and people just sort it out. But are there couples that we as divorce lawyers refer to as annuities because they just can't get their shit together even a year or two or three after the divorce? And we have to get involved in every single minor change in schedule that's merited as a function of the fact that their children are growing and aging and going back to school and doing new activities. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that, and it's a real shame. It's also job security to some degree for divorce lawyers. So I would encourage people who are divorced, separated, or never married, and they have children in common with someone else. Welcome back to school. It's a great opportunity for you to try to flex different co-parenting muscles, ideally healthy ones, and ones where you can have a child-centered discussion. And again, if it can't be done via phone, it can be done via email. It can be done using any of the parenting apps out there like Talking Parents or Our Family Wizard, or all apps that were designed to help co-parents communicate with each other. But yeah, it's a time of, look, change is good, but transitions are hard. And I think that that's what's happening for a lot of families right now, even married, intact families with children. It's a time of transition. The kids go back to school, summer's over, the pace changes, the focus changes, the level of stress goes up. Being a parent in the summer is in some ways easier, right? You don't have to okay, they got to eat, they got to get to practice, they got to get to school, they got homework. What do you mean there's a bake sale tomorrow? You didn't tell me there's a bake sale until 5 minutes before we got to get to school. All right, we got to figure out a way to make my Rice Krispie treats. This is the kind of stuff that during the year, it's a little more stressful. But again, I think also those challenges are the things that someday you look back on when your kids like mine are grown and out of the nest. And you remember those days kind of fondly and the chaos of that kind of fondly, because it really is someplace that, again, even in a divorced situation like mine was, you have the only other person in the world who loves your kids as much as you do on the other end of that phone and on the other end of that spectrum. And I think that that can be a really good thing if you can stay focused on the right stuff. Is it possible the New York Times actually took a break from beating up men?
A controversial new opinion piece by New York Times titled Boy Crisis of 2025, Meet the Boy Problem of the 1900s. Political analysts and social workers have noted a stark increase in juvenile delinquency, male unemployment and underemployment, suicide, and other negative behaviors in boys and young men, with conservative critics claiming the fault lies with the, quote, emasculation of society and impossible costs of living, and liberal influencers touting the need for further equity programs and decentering of men in public life. The article proposes a solution from previous generations: male-centric programs. California Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed an executive order to expand social programs to get young men, quote, hired, volunteering, and more connected to their community. Give you a quick quote from the article. For too long, mainstream institutions have failed to acknowledge and address the real challenges facing boys and men. They don't need more wagging fingers. They need helping hands.
Yeah. Look, it's absolutely beyond dispute, and it's been well established that there is a crisis of masculinity happening in the United States. There's a crisis with boys. The number of successful employment, graduation from undergraduate university, graduate programs, all of that impacting men, the suicide rate. There are so many things that are clear demonstrations of the fact that there's a crisis happening for men and boys. So what this article I kind of like is it was trying to do some problem solving instead of just problem identifying, which is really what the New York Times is usually best at, is just pointing out a problem and pulling the pin on the grenade and then going, I don't know, you guys got to figure it out. This one had, an opinion piece that I think came up with some good solutions. And it tied back to the 1900s, where essentially there were like gangs of boys running around the streets, essentially causing havoc. This is like the predecessors to the Crips and the Bloods. This is just like when young men had nothing to do. They had no jobs. There was no employment for them. And they would run around and get into trouble because they had all of that young male aggressive energy that you see in literally every species of men. You see it in primates. You see it in rabbits. You see it in literally every species of men. You see it in male dogs. So there is something that's tied to this. And I think their solution is, why don't we go back to the programs that were helpful then? They talk about the YMCA, which was the Young Men's Christians Association. They talk about the Boy Scouts, which then became Scouting America. Again, and they talk about the fact that there's not just a problem of where do we put boys and where do we put their energies, but also that there's a crisis in adult men wanting to be mentors and role models. It talks about the outcomes that we see when young men have and boys have male adult role models and mentors, that mentorship really improves outcomes. But a lot of adult men are afraid that if they extend themselves to young boys, that they're going to be perceived as a predator because of all of the scandals involving the Catholic Church, involving the Boy Scouts, where people were using their positions of mentorship as men in a predatory fashion. So did we, treat dandruff with decapitation? Yes. Did we say, okay, men, you don't want to be accused of doing anything wrong with children, so just don't do anything with children? And of course, now we're having a crisis because there's a lot of young men out there. It talks about in the article how the wait list for Big Brothers in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program for adult mentors for boys who grow up in single parent households raised by a woman. They don't have any male role models in their lives. A lot of men are not going into teaching anymore. It's a traditionally primarily female position, and that hasn't changed. So there's a lot of gaps where there's a lot of young men that don't have any real male role models. And I've talked about this before. It's why you have such a gravitation towards people like Andrew Tate and some of the other, what they call red pill people who essentially are an appealing male role model to young people who have no male role models in their lives. So I think it's a good article. I'm glad that the New York Times is talking about this stuff. I think it's kind of funny that the New York Times spends 99 out of 100 articles just pillorying men and boys, and then turns around with one opinion piece and is like, oh, maybe we should help solve this problem that they helped create. So, I think it's great that they're starting to throw some solutions out there. Listen, this is a problem. This is like your house being on fire. you can just say, well, we're going to ignore that problem and we'll talk about who started the fire and figure that out. Or you can try to put the fire out. Like, this is a problem that's going to get worse and worse and worse until we start taking it seriously. And I really hope we will take it serious. Someone who raised two young men, I can tell you it presents unique challenges. As someone who was once a young man who had a difficult role model in the fact that I had an alcoholic father, I was very, very lucky. I had a lot of mentors. I had martial arts instructors. I was a practicing devout Roman Catholic, and I had nothing but positive experiences with priests. So I was very fortunate that I was never, I would have been very suitable prey for someone who was looking for someone vulnerable. But instead, I had a lot of men that stepped up and taught me a lot about a traditionally masculine role, about being heroic, about wanting to self-sacrifice, about seeing discipline as a positive virtue. And there's something about watching a man embody those traits rather than just reading about them in a book or hearing about them, because it's really easy to pay lip service to those things. But watching someone embody those ideals is very inspirational. It's why we like watching the hero's journey. It's why Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and all the people that talk about the great sort of heroic journeys that we see in all art and literature throughout time. It all has to do with that hero's journey. It's all the stuff Jordan Peterson talks about as well. So fundamentally, I think this is a good thing. I think it's something that we need to start having more of a conversation about. I like anything that's about problem solving, not just problem identifying. We have gotten way too good at problem identifying, and we spend very little time problem solving. This might be a solution or the start of a solution to the crisis for men and boys. And it may be something, by the way, that gives both of us tremendous value. I think that for adult mentors, for adult men to be able to be a role model, I'll tell you something. I've been a mock trial coach for many years, and I have interns at my law firm every summer. It reminds me, being around those young people, how lucky I am to get to do the job that I do. There is something about watching a young person who's looking at you and going, oh my God, someday I want to do that. Someday I want to be just like that. That makes you sit up a little taller and go, yeah, I guess it is kind of cool. Like, there was a time where the only thing I wanted was to be able to walk into a courtroom and say, James J. Sexton for the plaintiff. And I've been doing it for 25 years, and it's really easy to forget what a privilege that is and what an amazing thing it is that I get to do that I worked so hard that I could pass all the tests and jump all the hurdles you need to do to get to do that. And there's something about being around young people who aspire to be what you are that reminds you, like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So any guy out there who's watching this, pick up a hammer, man, and get to it. Whatever it is that you do, you have something to offer young men. You do. You have something to offer them. If you know how to fix a tire, if you know how to do anything, if you know how to start a campfire, if you don't, letting that be an example to young men in your life, in your neighborhood, in your community, really embracing that, you are doing something amazing for, by the way, if you have nothing but daughters, this is a great service to do for your daughters, because you're going to help create men that they're going to find appealing and men that are going to bring appeal to them, because those are going to be men who are reliable, trustworthy, and are not going to, again, hurt people, right? So if we can teach people compassion, kindness, discipline, all those wonderful traits that we as men have the ability to embody and to exemplify and show to young men, that's a great service that you could do for your community, your family, your country, your world. So I'd encourage every man to jump on that. Weddings, pregnancy, funerals? Am I the asshole? Here we go. Am I the asshole for not scheduling my wedding around my sister's family planning? Boy, this already is off to a start. My fiance and I got engaged this summer, and we think we have found our venue for a very small wedding. We are strongly leaning towards May 2026, but would consider September as a backup. A few weeks after I got engaged, my older sister, 33 female, suddenly got her IUD removed and told my mom and I that she and her boyfriend, 27 male, younger man, look at this, are starting to try for a baby. They've dropped the goalie. She noted in her ideal world, she would get pregnant fairly quickly and the baby would come out around June. Boy, don't say women don't plan things. After my sister revealed this to us, my mom started talking about my September wedding. I clarified to her that while September is a backup, I strongly prefer May. She was taken aback and pointed out that my sister might be very pregnant and unable to come to our wedding. I had considered this, but But I also consider that it's not a guarantee that she will get pregnant right away or at all, making it just as possible for her to be heavily pregnant in September. Additionally, even if her ideal timeline didn't work, I live 600 miles away from her, so I doubt she'd come at a September wedding with a newborn anyways. My mom seems certain that my sister will get pregnant right away and said it would be inconsiderate of me to pick a May wedding date. Am I the asshole? I do not think you are the asshole. I actually don't think anyone in this situation is an asshole. Which is refreshing. It's rare. I feel like there's always one or more assholes, and usually it's like an asshole sandwich. It's just asshole, asshole, asshole instead of bread or filling. So I'm kind of glad. This is nice. This is a refreshing change. You're not an asshole because you have a right to plan your wedding, and you don't have to consider these kinds of contingencies that are fairly remote contingencies. We don't know how quickly she's going to get pregnant. We don't know, what's going to happen with that and whether it would be an impediment or not to her attending a wedding if she even is pregnant. There are people that certainly attend weddings when they're pregnant, but if you live 600 miles away, attending that wedding is going to be challenging for her under those circumstances. But again, I don't think you have an obligation to plan around that, especially if it's going to be a very small and intimate wedding. Your mom is not an asshole for having this concern. I'm sure she's had to juggle you and your sister's competing interests from time to time. This is probably not the first time. If your sister's 33 and you're in your 20s, these are the kinds of things she's probably accustomed to, trying to keep you both happy and trying to sort of balance your respective positions on things. So mom, good job to mom trying to play the politician on this one and trying to sort of meet everyone's needs. And your sister isn't an asshole for being excited about wanting to get pregnant, about wanting to, have that timed in a way that, is a positive thing for her. It doesn't sound like she's the one really putting pressure on your mom. It sounds like your mom is probably playing peacekeeper and anticipating what the problem would be, which parents, I can say as a parent, we do even when our children are adults. We tend to be like, remember to wear a coat, even though we have a 25-year-old and clearly you know whether to wear a coat or just be fucking cold. It's your own problem. Now you're an adult. So, we tend to still look at you. We taught you that the cow says moo. We're still going to look at you like your kids. So I don't think your sister's wrong. I wish her all the best with her desire to start a family. It certainly sounds like you are off to a good start in terms of planning your wedding pretty far in advance. And it sounds like you're on the right step. And mom is a peacemaker between the two of you. I'm sure you'll find some balance, some way to make the day special. Really, I personally think weddings are lovely. They're a great party, but it's way more important to support a person during their marriage journey rather than just showing up on the day of the wedding. It's really, really easy to show up at the wake and the funeral. That's not when a person's really processing their grief. It's a year later when they're by themselves, or a couple of years later when they find in a drawer the Christmas card that their mom sent to them, and it was the last one that they sent to them. That's a very personal example, but a real one. So the truth is, that's when they need support. That's when they need help. So your sister, I hope will be there for you throughout your marriage journey, and she'll be a resource to you. And that's really what you want. Just like you'll be there for her during her journey as a mother, her pregnancy, and hopefully the life of your niece or nephew when they're born. So that's really what matters. And if you miss those journeys because you're so caught up in the details of the wedding, that's when you'd be an asshole. What really makes a person not an asshole is being there in the long term for their family. It's time for another Sexton-ism. These are, as you might recall, phrases that I say so frequently that my staff jokes about it and says that I should compile them into a book. So hopefully someday that book will happen. Helping someone get what they want is easier than changing what they want. So that's the Sexton-ism. Helping someone get what they want is easier than helping them change what they want. So people come to me all the time with problems. That's what I do. I'm a problem solver for a living. And they come to me and they say, this is what I want. This is what I want. And there's always a compulsion in me to try to say to that person, no, you don't want that. You want this other thing, or you want something else. But I've learned over the years, it's actually easier to help someone try to get what they want than it is to try to change what they think they want. Because very often the only way we learn that something isn't what we wanted is by getting it. And sometimes we have no idea that it's going to not fulfill us in the way we thought that it would. It's not going to fill the void inside us that we thought it would. I can't tell you how many times in my practice someone says, I want the house. I want to keep the house. I can't lose the house. The house is the anchor. The house is the ball. And we give up all kinds of other things so they can keep the house. And 6 months later, they call me and they go, yeah, I'm selling the house. And I go, you're selling the house? Do you know how hard we worked to keep that house? How much we gave up for you to keep that house? And the truth is they realize it didn't give them the stability, security that they thought that it did. So I think it's really important in life to remember that it's easier to help someone get what they want than it is to help them change what they want. Hey, thanks so much for spending some more time with us today. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you have a story idea, comments, questions, am I the asshole? Just send it to submissions@sextonshow.com. We really do read them and we'll use them in the future. Take care.